Hey guys, just want to take this time to say I had this recorded and ready to edit, but one day my power decided to go out and erase everything I had previously off my Mac computer, so I'm re-recording this now and releasing it a little later than I had hoped for. But anyway, here's the program that I was originally going to show you. You ever sit there and wonder, what if this band released a certain album instead of what actually came? Well, that's one thing we can think about here, and that is Panic at the Disco. In 2008, they released their album Pretty Odd, their second studio album, their follow-up to their highly successful first album, A Fever You Can't Sweat Out. But they had another album planned before that, and if it weren't for that album getting scrapped, Pretty Odd would have never happened. So today, I'm here to pretty much give you my opinion on what if Cricket and Clover, the so-called album by Panic at the Disco that was supposed to be released in 2007, came out instead of Pretty Odd. But before I get to that in general, I'm just going to give you a brief history of the lost album by Panic at the Disco and what it was supposed to sound like compared to their old record and what we actually got. So without further ado, let's get this first ever episode of What If underway.
'Cause it's 9 in the afternoon, and your eyes are the size of the moon. You're good 'cause you can, so you do. We're feeling so good.
So back in late 2006, the Fever You Can't Sweat Out tour came to an end, which means it was time for the band to start writing new material for their upcoming second studio album, and their record label, Fueled by Ramen, wanted it by 2007 at the latest. So February 2007, early, Ryan Ross starts writing material for their second album, and in March of 2007, so a month later, they began production on their second album. Now this was weird because instead of using an actual recording studio, all four of the band members crammed themselves into a cabin in Las Vegas and said, we're going to record here and we're going to make it different than what we did in our first album. Their idea was actually a concept album, that of a fairy tale, and it was supposed to be the story of a doomed love affair, and they were going to call it Cricket and Clover. Now, it was supposed to be interesting because the tracks were supposed to lead into one another, and there were no choruses at all. So it was kind of like just someone reading one of those storybooks to you, those, virtual books that get read to you. That's kind of what it was going to sound like in a way. And there was going to be little to no guitar at all. They wanted to experiment with different instruments. And it got so far as to Fall Out Boy's Pete Wentz, who heard the thing, say it actually sounded more like a film score than it turned into a 2007 version of the Beatles, which, we'll get to that later. There's only really a couple tracks out there that really mean it, have come off of this record, but really there was 7 songs I was able to find on the track listing. The first song was going to be called There Once Was a Man from Nantucket, kind of like an introduction in a way. 2 should be a pretty familiar title. It's called Folking Around, which did end up as a track instrumental on Pretty Odd. And then 3 was supposed to be called I Don't Have a Shirt, But I've Got a Hat, kind of their other weird titles. And then 4 and 5 can be mixed together, so this could just been 6 songs, who knows, but you have Fill Me Up and then Porridge, or it was said that it was supposed to be combined together to be a song called Fill Me Up with Porridge. And then, of course, the 6th song, or the 5th song, depending on how you want to look at it, was Nearly Witches, which there was a demo from the original version, but the full version ended up on Vices and Virtues, but sounding nothing like it did back then. And then the 7th track was called It's True Love. I don't know if this was supposed to finish off the album. I don't necessarily know how long the album was supposed to be, but this seems like that the love affairs actually find each other and end up tying the knot. So with only 2 songs out there, one being a demo and the other one being an instrumental, and I guess you can say Nearly, which is also being out there, but not as the original material as we were expecting. We don't really know what else this album was going to sound like. And it's weird because the producer of this album, who ended up producing Pretty Odd, Rob Mates, or however you would say it, says there's no music whatsoever. He'd be surprised if someone had it on like a CD burner, hard drive or whatever. However, Brendan Urie himself of the band says that there is music out there. The record label has it, but they just chose not to release anything, so it's out there. So whether you want to believe Rob or Brandon, go ahead. I personally don't think, obviously, we're ever going to see anything, from this record, but from what it seems like there is stuff out there, could be, possibly. And yeah, I mean, they ended up scrapping this record, Cricket and Clover, because Fueled by Ramen was just pushing them to get it done. We want it done by the end of the year 2007. We want it done now, right away. Follow up your album. Let's get it done. Let's get it going. And the band just kept finding it more frustrating to fit what they were trying to go with and tell this story. So they pretty much left the cabin and went to London and got a studio and started production all over again on a brand new album that ended up being Pretty Odd, which was released on March 25th of 2008. In January of that year, 9 in the Afternoon was the first single release. Now, they did say that this was originally supposed to be kind of a song for the album. They said it was rewritten in a way and redone, but it was supposed to make the album. And they said there is a lot of things that were supposed to be on Cricket and Clover that made Pretty Odd, hence the more orchestral sound they had, the softer sound, the more happier sound that never told a story. But they said you definitely have heard some things that we wanted to do for Cricket and Clover that are actually on this album. And this album ended up being one of their least successful, Pretty Odd. It didn't chart as high, and then Vices and Virtues didn't, but their past 3 albums have gone number 2, number 1, and number 1 respectively, which is Too Weird, Too Rare, Death of a Bachelor, and Pray for the Wicked. So even after this, they're getting success, but it seems like now that it's just Brendan Urie, it's more of a solo thing. So, yeah, with that being said, now it's time to get to the what if portion of this video.
'Cause it's 9 in the afternoon, and your eyes are the size of the moon. You're good 'cause you can, so you do. We're feeling so good.
So now leaves the question, what if Cricket and Clover had been released instead of Pretty Odd? And I gotta say, maybe a little bit of the same. I mean, Pretty Odd did sell pretty well. It was certified gold in 2016. But like Pretty Odd, I think this one gets critically bashed by the fans and by the critics. I mean, this album got a 70 out of 100, which isn't bad, and a lot of other positive reviews, but not as positive as A Fever You Can't Sweat Out. I think it would be the fact that they decided to change their sound so quick and do something different, especially if they were to release Cricket and Clover, which was a storytelling album more sounding like a film score apparently than an actual, Panic at the Disco-like thing. And to be honest, I think it would have sold less copies than Pretty Odd. Yes, it would have been a follow-up to a successful album, but fans would have swarmed to it, heard a couple songs, and then probably just would have kind of been like, what is this? This is not what we ordered at all. And, things probably wouldn't have went well, and I think things would have soured with the band as well. And I still think Ryan Ross would have left, and John Walker, their bassist, would have left. And who knows, maybe Spencer Smith, instead of staying for 2 more albums, would have also left the band earlier. I mean, there's a lot of things to look into, but I don't think it would have been as successful as Pretty Odd. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of glad after hearing what Cricket and Clover was supposed to be that Pretty Odd was released. It's my favorite Panic record. But at the same time, everybody has to be a little curious, and I'm a little curious as to just what Cricket and Clover would have sounded like if we even would have liked it. I mean, there's so little out there. There's one song that actually got put on an album that wasn't rewritten, and that was Folkin' Around, and then Nearly Witches that was rewritten for Vices and Virtues, and then you have like a minute and 15-second demo of the original version. So it still piques my interest as to what this album would have sounded like, and would it have garnered success. It's very interesting to think about, but in the end, I still think Pretty Odd was the best way to go for this band. But you can always leave thinking, what if? So yeah, that does it for my first episode of What If. This was What If Panic at the Disco released Cricket and Clover instead of Pretty Odd. My next episode of What If, I'm doing another band that planned to release a concept album but released something completely different. And once again, it's another band that had to follow up a debut album, and I'm talking about Weezer. What if they followed up their debut Blue album, their successful Blue album, with what was supposed to be 1996's concept album, Space concept album, Songs from the Black Hole, instead of releasing Pinkerton? What would have happened there? Which would be a pretty interesting story. And then the episode after that, I'm probably going to do what would have happened if the master tapes for Green Day's Cigarettes and Valentines was never stolen and American Idiot never happened. Would they still be the same successful band? Would they have made a comeback as big like they did? But anyway, like I said, that does it for this first episode of What If. Tell me in the comments if you enjoyed. Tell me what you would have thought would have happened had Panic at the Disco released Cricket and Clover instead of Pretty Odd. And would we have Pretty Odd? Even with that record? I don't know. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, share. And I'll catch you guys next time.